Our next speaker, Dr. Rand Paul, has formed an exploratory committee for the Republican nomination for United States Senate. Dr. Paul has practiced ophthalmology in Bowling Green, Kentucky for the past 18 years. This is Dr. Paul's first campaign, but he's worked on many campaigns for his father, Congressman Ron Paul of Texas. Dr. Paul and his wife Kelly live in Bowling Green with their 3 sons. Please welcome Dr. Rand Paul.
For having us. I'd like to introduce my middle son, Duncan, who's with me. Can you stand up? There he is. My wife and I still laugh when we think of this. There was a magazine, Spy magazine, and early in the Bill Clinton years, there was a magazine cover, and it was the first 101 lies of Bill Clinton. And what was funny about it was like lie number 3 was they caught him coming out of a McDonald's, and they said, "What did you have?" He said, yogurt and a Diet Coke. So they went inside. This is the old Bill Clinton when he wore the shorts too short for him to be wearing and was trying to run off a few pounds. And they went inside and interviewed, and they said like 2 cheeseburgers, a milkshake, you know. I have to admit, I've only been doing this about 3 months, and I've told lies. And I'm going to go ahead and come out with it and let you know. When my wife asked me about Fancy Farm, she asked me how fancy it was, and I kind of let on it might have been something that it wasn't, maybe. When she said, "Where are we staying?" I might have made it sound like B&B, not RV. And she would have been here this morning, but she's still recovering from the RV night and music at Fancy Farm. Thomas Paine wrote that government is a necessary evil. What did he mean by that? He meant that, of course, we all recognize that we need government. We have to have government for some of the things that the private citizens really can't do, such as national defense, which is probably the primary obligation of our federal government. But when he said it's a necessary evil, what did he mean by that? It's an evil because when we allow government to grow, the bigger government is, every ounce of government we give up an ounce of freedom. And how do we give up our freedom? We give up our freedom through taxation, through regulation of our business lives or personal lives. So the bigger government grows, the less our freedom is. I take this as a philosophy that we look at it and we approach every issue. We approach every new issue that comes before Congress and every new issue that comes. Can the private marketplace do it better, or should government do it? And I think this is an important analysis. If you look back at, for example, Thomas Jefferson's attitude towards it, his attitude was that government is best and governs least. These are things we say we can all agree to, and these are things that many of us have fought for. For 15 years I've been promoting something called the Taxpayer Pledge. This is something that Americans for Tax Reform does, and it's a pledge that people who run for office take not to raise taxes. I personally have gotten over 100 people to sign that, many of them in the legislature, and many of them in candidates for the legislature. Many in the media have said to me and looked to me and said, "Oh, he's an anti-tax absolutist." I said, well, I don't know if that's really a criticism or if I should take that as a badge of honor. But I do oppose new taxes. I do oppose new government programs. I think the one area where we as a Republican Party have maybe not done such a good job is that there have been many things that come. In fact, I think we're doing a great job as a minority party. But who wants to be in the minority? We steadfastly and universally opposed the stimulus package. But we didn't do so hot when the bank bailout package came up. And they're still using the bank bailout package. The TARP funds were used to bail out General Motors. They're now being used, some say, to bail out minority broadcasters. They were used in the Chrysler bankruptcy. And we want to say, oh, well, this is just President Obama. But guess what? It happened under our watch. Under our watch, we passed the bankruptcy bill. In fact, our nominee raced back to Washington, suspended his campaign, and said, oh, I guess I'm going to vote the same way as President Obama does on the bank bailout. This bank bailout is the worst piece of legislation in the last 3 decades, and it continues to wreak havoc in our economy. We as Republicans need to decide as we move forward, and as we have a primary here, you need to decide, is it enough just to have an R next to the name, or does that Republican have to believe in something and mean something? I would say not only do we need to oppose things like the bank bailout, which many of our leaders didn't do, we also need to oppose the budget debacle. President Obama's budget was $1.75 trillion in debt, and all the Republicans voted no. But you know what the Republican alternative was? $500 billion in debt. If I go to Washington, the alternative will be a balanced budget. If I go to Washington, every appropriations bill will have an amendment from me reducing that appropriation bill to bring it in line with the balanced budget. So if we're 20% over budget, I will introduce to every appropriations bill a 20% reduction in the appropriations. We cannot continue to go at this pace. The deficit next year will be 13% of the gross national product. Federal spending is 28% of gross national product. These are historic highs. It's not going to be enough. As one of my economic advisors said, the teeter-totter is way over to the left. If we elect someone in the center, a centrist, we don't tilt it at all. We end up still leaning way to the left. You need to elect someone who truly believes in the free market and in limited government and will vote that way. And it's not always easy. We double the debt as Republicans from $5 to $10 trillion. You know how many Republicans voted against those budgets? A handful, 10 or 15. So you need not only more Republicans, you need Republicans who will actually vote no. I promise to vote against any deficit budget, Republican or Democrat. I will base my conclusions on whether or not the budget is balanced and on whether or not it's a good idea for the legislation, but not necessarily on whether or not it is introduced by the Republicans or the Democrats. We have to make our decisions based on the value of the issues. This primary will be something that is a very good time for the party to grow. There have been many national polls that have shown that the party is shrinking, and we need to somehow begin to present our message in another way. There are two ways that you can win a primary in Kentucky, or win a general election in Kentucky. The state is almost evenly split. We have almost 40% Republican, 40% Democrat, and there's maybe 10 or 20% in the middle. We need to decide how we attract those independents. And there are two ways you can do this. One way you can do this is to simply give up our message and run as Democrats. We can adopt their message. We have had candidates who have run for office as Republicans and who have simply said, I can get you more federal projects than the Democrats. That's not why I run for office. I think we truly have to stand for something. I think we need to nominate people who will steadfastly get up and vote to change things. I think we can run on our message. I don't think we have to moderate our message. I think we can run on our message and it can appeal to independents. Many independents have left us, not because they believe we won't reduce taxes. We're good at reducing taxes, but we haven't been very good at reducing spending. What we have to do as a party is convince those people. We have to give back the believability as fiscal conservatives. We don't have to give up our message. We need to convince those in the middle who say, yeah, I'd vote for you guys, but you don't seem to follow through. When you say you'll balance the budget, you don't do it. So we need to convince those people to come back, but not by moderating our message. There's one final point that I'd like to leave you with. The debt leads to inflation and higher prices. Higher prices hurt the working class and those on fixed income the most. This is the audience that we're losing to the Democrats. We bring them back by telling them that big government isn't good for them, that big government is hurting them. Big government hurts them at the pump, it hurts them in the grocery store. We can bring them back with our message. I appreciate the invitation this morning. And if you'd like to know more about our campaign, it's randpaul2010.com. Thank you very much for having me.
Our next speaker, Stephen Rudy, made history in